Fourth, I mean 3-1 against everyone, 3-0 against in one matchup. Which means no one even took me to the 5th and final game. No one came close. Those games I lost, they just drew better. And it always happens in the best of 5. Almost always happens in the best of 5. It just what happens. But my deck seemed to, and my playstyle seemed to just beat everyone right now. And Womos will be coming much later. So I will play those games against him, but it's not going to change the fact that I'm first place. So there is really something that I have figured out about Lyonar. There is something I know, and I'd like to share it with you. This video will later become a YouTube tutorial on how to play Lyonar. Keep in mind, this is March 1st, 2000. The game might update by the time you're watching this on YouTube, so that's why I'm not just gonna show you my deck and say, you go and play with it. No, I'm gonna explain the purpose behind every card in most matchups, so that you can, perhaps if one card changes, you can then put another card in that serves the certain purpose. I'm gonna do my best to make you understand what makes this deck tick, what makes it work. This is an Argian high main of the Lyonar Empire over here, and he's really good. And I like him, he's my buddy. And then, this is my deck. 2 Soundrop Elixirs, 3 Komodo Chargers, 3 True Strikes, 2 Wisps. Actually, let's just separate them into portions. My openings. Komodo, Wisp, Light Chaser, Adept, Sentinel, Knight. Those I consider my opening game minions. Now, the best opening is obviously 3 Komodos, right? Because you can just take 3 free units and grab every single mana node on the map. So that's what you always want. The Crystal Wisps are ridiculous. I mean, I really like the Komodos in pretty much every deck, basically. Let me just say that. 3 Komodos in every deck. You really can't go too wrong with them, because first of all, they are free if you can grab a mana node with them, denying that same mana node to your opponent is worth it just by itself. Second of all, those can provide a very important one instant damage to the board when you need to finish off an important minion, or more importantly, when you want to deal 1 damage to an enemy to kill his artifact. It's a great artifact removal, very cheap, always easy to squeeze into your deck. I can't really imagine a deck without 3 Komodo Chargers, unless it's very, very specialized and you really know what you're doing. Just get those 3 Komodos in pretty much every deck, I would say. And the Crystal Wisp. Oh, and by the way, Komodo Charger against Magmar. You want to keep one alive in a corner away from your opponent. Magmar has a removal spell called Natural Selection that can kill the minion with the lowest attack on the board. Which means, against Magmar, I take my Komodo, I play him, and then I just run away to the corner, so that when he wants to use the Natural Selection against me, he has to target my Komodo rather than targeting the actual minion he wants to kill. Very good strategy against Magmar, and fully recommend you actually do that against Magmar. Just run away to the corner. The Crystal Wisp, it's probably gonna see some changes. I'm not sure what they'll do to him. Maybe they're gonna make him 3 mana and 2/2 or something like that. But it's very powerful in its current state, and it's just godlike in this deck. From what I've been testing that Wisp only today, but every game I get a Wisp opening, I win without much difficulty. I don't know what it is about having 1 more core, but holy shit, it works. It really does, and if I could afford it, I think I would have played the 3rd Wisp. I'm not sure. Maybe 2 is enough, maybe 3 would be too much, but it's damn good. It's damn good. Of course, in the late game, you may not want to play it at all. You may just want to replace it. In terms of other matchups, I've seen the Wisps work really well for Magmar. And I've seen them work pretty well for Abyssian as well, because Abyssian could have combos with many small minions, like the Death Watch or the removal spell that kills your and his minion. So the Wisps, very solid. I think they're gonna get nerfed. And another part of my opening is the Windblade Adept. Just have 3 of them in every... Where is he? There he is. Just have 3 of them in every Lyonar deck. Just do it, because it's just so efficient. It's too efficient. A 4-3, basically a 4-3, just keep them always to your general. Always next to your general. It's a 4-3 for 2 mana. It's ridiculous, it's stupid. You need 3 of them. It's the best opening when you can drop him on the board. Arclyte Sentinel. I almost never open with that unless in some circumstances you can actually get a Komodo, grab the mana when you're with the second player, grab the mana with the Komodo, and move the Komodo forward, and then summon the Arclyte Sentinel to remove the opponent's minion in his face. It's really cool. The Knight is really cool opening, just like the Adept. You want 3 of them. You really just do, because it's too efficient not to have 3 of them. And it's really nice when you're the second player, you can just plunk it down on your mana and still use some kind of 1 costing thing. It's just too efficient not to have 3, in my opinion. The Sentinels, they serve as removal in the mid-game in a very nice way. I have 2 of them at the moment. I removed 1 to get a Crystal Wisp in, and I'm kind of happy with that decision. 3 might be too much. It's quite a situational minion in the mid-game, when you sometimes need him for removal, but if you get 3, it may be too much, and you may have inefficient turns when you play them too often. So I would say 2 is a good number. And then the Light Chasers is more the healing portion of the deck than its opening portion. I would say that you almost never want to open with them unless you have no other choice. They're quite easy to just get rid of, and in the beginning they obviously don't heal you at all. Their purpose is mostly to just heal your general for 3 HP when they get summoned. So in the mid game, you want to squeeze them into your turns to regenerate your HP and keep trading with your opponent until you whittle him down and he dies. It's extremely important against Songhai decks who mostly just want to burn you down with spells. It's a godsend at that point. It's your saving grace, along with the Sundrop Elixirs. Now at the moment I have 2 Elixirs and 3 Light Chasers. I may want to actually turn that around. I'm not entirely certain. I think 3 Sundrop Elixirs will be a better idea. I think it will be a better idea. But you want them especially against Songhai. If you're playing in a tournament setting and you may want to adjust your deck according to your opponent, those are great against Songhai. Great in every matchup really, but against Songhai they just shine the most. Oftentimes when I'm playing a Lyonar matchup, a potion just gives me that 1 extra edge, 1 extra advantage against my opponent. If I draw my potions, he doesn't, then I'm the one that wins through the tradings. It's quite a thing. You want it. I mean, it costs 0. The one thing about potions that some people don't understand: do not save them in your hand. In this game, you want to burn through your cards ASAP. I've never once had a game where I used all my 40 cards, so don't be afraid of that. You want to use your potions, even when you're on full HP. Even if it heals like 1 or 2 HP, you pretty much want to use them anyway. Because you want to cycle through your deck fast. When you draw them when you need them, it's great, but when you draw them and you don't need them, you still want to just redraw them through usage to do something else. And remember, you can use them on minions as well. If your general is full HP and your minion is wounded, you still want to use that potion just to cycle through your deck. Unless you're playing against Songhai and you know that or another burn deck, another direct damage deck, and you're scared you will die, you may want to then save your potion. But most times, I just use it, and it works well for me. Like, really, it might be a little counterintuitive, but just burning through my cards as soon as possible to get any kind of advantage really works. Really works. So that's the healing portion of the deck. Now, the removal portion of the deck. A big portion of this deck is actually just removal. As you can see, I've got 3 True Strikes. Some people told me to drop some of them from my deck. I think it's bullshit. 3 True Strikes, every Lyonar deck, every single time, period. It's a big contribution to my successes in this tournament today and on the ladder. I've got like 90% win rate on the ladder, I shit you not. And this is a big part of it. The real amazingness of True Strike is because in this game, you don't have card advantage. Card advantage means nothing because you draw up to 4 cards every single turn. So you want to burn through your deck fast. And this 1 costing spell that you can just squeeze into your turn. When you have 6 mana, you can play True Strike and the Guardian. True Strike and the Lion. When you just squeeze in that little extra 2 damage, it makes all the difference. It makes a gigantic difference. You really want 3. I mean, no shit, you want 3. Lasting Judgment is a spell that I've been lately considering removing from my deck, but I still feel like that little bit of removal could save me in some matchups. It depends on the matchup. I mean, some matchups like some Abyssian combos and Magmar golems, you really want all the removals you can get because you need to clear up those minions that trigger the combo. Sometimes you get a choice between removing that minion or dying to combo next turn. And the Lasting Judgment is just, it's very situational, so you don't want 3. But in some situations, it's just so life-saving, I still keep it in my deck. I've been thinking about it, and I think Lasting Judgment is better than Martyrdom. Now, Martyrdom destroys any minion and heals the corresponding general for the amount of HP that was lost by that minion. So, this is a more reliable removal, Martyrdom. It kills anything, but I see it this way. Minions that Lasting Judgment can't deal with, but Martyrdom can deal with, are minions with really high HP. Lasting Judgment kills anything that has 3 HP. So you can basically just punch something with your hero to bring it down to 3. If it's 5 HP, you bring it down to 3 with your hero and then use the Lasting Judgment and you're good. Now, Martyrdom is only better against really high HP minions. And that means Martyrdom is only better against Lasting Judgment if you want to heal the enemy hero ridiculously. Like, do you really want the enemy hero to recover like 8 or 10 HP? It's hard to say, really. So, I prefer Lasting Judgment over Martyrdom. I think this amount of removal is necessary for your success. Lyonar is very much so a removal deck in the mid-game. And then with a Lion finisher that I will get to later. But I think you want 2 Lasting Judgments. You feel free to test the Martyrdom, but I'm leaning towards 2 Lasting Judgments as my removal, along with 3 True Strikes for sure. And I really love Sentinels as my removal option, because they both bring a minion on the board and do that 2 damage you want. I really like the combo of something on the board and yet something to remove. I do enjoy my 2 Sentinels, and you may want to consider 3, but I think 2 is a good number because they are quite situational, and 3 might give you some inefficient turns when you drop them without using their ability on anyone. But 99% of the time, I use the Sentinel's ability aggressively. If you're gonna tell me that his ability isn't that good for buffing your minions, I'm gonna agree. It's used as a removal spell, as a removal ability, rather than a buffing ability. So that's how you should use it, according to the way I play Lyonar. And then I'm going these days. It depends on the metagame, and you may want to adjust it and add some ephemeral shrouds to your Dispel, especially if you're struggling against Dispel vulnerable decks. Like if you're struggling in a Lyonar mirror, or if you're struggling against Abyssian combos, or against Vetruvian probably as well, you want a lot of Dispel in your deck. You want to add 2 Ephemeral Shrouds instead of something. But I'm running only 2 Templar for my general decks. And if I meet a scary deck in let's say a tournament series, like when I played the Lyonar Mirror in this tournament here, after the first game I added Ephemeral Shroud and 1 Shroud and one Sunbloom to my deck, because in Lyonar Mirror you really want more Dispel against Lyonar and against Abyssian, and to some degree against Vetruvian as well, you want more Dispel. I think actually, to be honest, if I wanted an optimal deck, if I could afford it, I will get a 3rd Templar as soon as I can afford the Spirit. I think 3rd Templar will do me better. It's a great card. Not only it dispels everything it hits, it also dispels before it hits. So if you dispel an enemy Silverguard Knight, it'll hit you for only 1, because the Zeal will go away by the time it retaliates. So you can really trade against a big-ass minion, and it will dispel it on hit, so the Templar will survive, stay around on the board, so not only your Templar will already do the job it was supposed to, dispel the minion, but your opponent will also have to worry about the Templar afterwards. When your opponent will still have to invest something in removing your Templar after it has already done its job. Very efficient. Very efficient. Extremely good removal with Dispel. Completely recommended. I think 3 is the way to go in the deck. I think 3 is the way to go. You may want to then remove 1 Suntide Maiden, I'm not that convinced about them, and get a 3rd Templar. I would say that's a good deal. The Maiden's great, but situationally great. It's just like everything else is just incredible in my deck, and this is the one card I really wonder about. I mean, if your opponent can't deal with it in a single turn, it just heals every single time, allowing you to just keep trading and then healing up. So it's a card that sometimes will win you the entire freaking game. And yet other times it does almost nothing. So the biggest reason I keep it around is because otherwise I would have nothing that costs 4. And that's a pretty awkward gap in my mana curve that I wanted to smooth out. And it's not a bad card, it's a good card and gave me some success. But if there was anything I would say you should remove, maybe 1 Divine Bond, but I would rather lean towards removing 1 Maiden rather than... And keep 3 Divine Bond, because it's the finisher. I'll get to that later. But I think if you wanted to remove anything, it would be the Sunshine Maiden. And then the last removal spell that I didn't cover yet, that's in this deck, is 2 Tempest. Now Tempest, sometimes it's just useless. Most times it's just useless. But when Abyssian starts dropping 6 1 or 2 HP minions on the board immediately, now that's gonna be pretty fucking useful. So it's one of those very situational things, so you don't want 3, but you do want 2. Because some situations, it's just so game-saving, it's just unbelievable. It can totally turn around a game that's already fucked. It can give you this perfect amount of damage to wipe the board when you otherwise wouldn't be able to. If you combo it, for example, with an Arclyte Sentinel or a True Strike or 2, or a Lasting Judgment, it can really get things done. I totally keep 2 around for those situations. And also, keep in mind, it's the only spell you have that can damage a general. So it could be used for artifact removal quite effectively. And sometimes this is the only thing that saved me from the claws of Magmar over here. So it's a good stuff. It's good stuff. Chaos Severa, you're talking about the Lasting Judgment. Yes, it takes away 3 health and gives you 3 attack, if that's what you mean. And I, 99% of the time, use it as removal, because it does take away 3 health from the opponent as well. So I thought I would use it more for buffing when I first created this deck. From a new player's mindset, it seemed to me like a buff. And then the more I played, the more experience I got playing Lyonar. Now, it's like 99% of the time you just use it as removal. You really just do. It works better that way. The only time I ever use it as a buff is when I have lethal damage thanks to it, and that's just an added benefit, an awesome added benefit when you want to get lethal. So that's as far as the removal goes. And then for harassment and trading, the Arclyte Regalia, I don't know if it's gonna get nerfed or something, but that armor, holy fuck that armor, man. That armor wins games. Your general gains 2 attack, and the first time your general takes damage that turn, prevent 2 of it. You want to keep this artifact alive for as long as possible. You put it on, and you trade against everything that has 2 attack, and that damage is negated, so your artifact doesn't take damage, and you just keep rolling over your enemy with that artifact, keep trading favorably until your enemy is just suffocated. It's incredible. You're trading against the enemy hero, you're trading against minions who have 2 or less damage, and it's just goddamn ridiculous. It's silly. Oh yeah, you could use the Lasting Judgment on the Maiden. And I've never actually tested it. Why did I never test it? But I think Maiden would regenerate the HP. Someone told me that the Maiden would regenerate the HP, but I'm not sure myself. I think so, but you'd have to try it for yourself. I love buffing my Maiden. Buffing Maidens is incredible. Divine Bond on a Maiden, and you've got a 9/3 minion that'll heal every single turn. It's just stupid. Freaking OP. And the Regalia, freaking OP as well. I think if you told me to name one single most overpowered Lyonar card, I would name the Arclyte Regalia for... I think it's gonna cost 4. I think they're gonna make it cost 4. It's ridiculous in its current state. It's just fucking stupid. Your general gets 2 attack, and you prevent 2 damage, so you basically want to keep this artifact alive. And when you've got the Regalia, you also want to focus on clearing the enemy minions, because the strategy against the Regalia is to stack up a lot of minions on the board. It only negates the first 2 damage, so after that, every single minion can deal damage to Regalia, and you basically want to kill the Regalia in one big burst in a single turn. You need to prevent your opponent from doing that by wiping the minions off the board every single game. That's why Regalia works much better in a removal deck like mine than it works in a buff Lyonar deck that I've beaten 3-1 in this tournament with just adding some Dispel to the deck, no problem. Regalia is just ridiculous, and I'm also thinking that a 3rd one, if I can afford it, would be great, but it is the rarest of all cards. It's quite expensive. I've disenchanted everything else. Like, I don't have a single Songhai, Vetruvian, Abyssian, or Magmar card other than the basics. I disenchanted everything to get those Regalias, and holy shit, 90% win rate on the ladder, I shit you not. It's ridiculous, it's just stupid. And then the finishers. Basically, I don't run as many buffs as some people, and I don't need to. I have few reliable finishers that work for me every single goddamn time. Divine Bond, choose any minion to gain attack equal to its health. Now that, with the Templar, gives you a 6/5 Templar with Rush, 6 instant damage on the board, right there. For only 6 mana. This with the Lion, Divine Bond Lion. Now that is an 8/5 minion with Rush, attacks immediately, and attacks twice with Celerity. So you take that and you deal 16 damage to the enemy hero. 16 damage to the enemy hero in a single turn. Right there, from Rush, from your hand. It's ridiculous. You just... I think maybe that's why the Crystal Wisps are so damn good in this deck. They get you to this 8 mana so fast. They get you to the 8 mana faster, and that's your kill zone. You basically want to remove everything from the board and keep a small board advantage until turn 8, and then you're just looking for a Lion Divine Bond. You're looking for an Iron Cliff Guardian Divine Bond, where you just drop this thing in the enemy's face. Some people like to play Divine Bond immediately after dropping it in the enemy's face. I tend to, more often than not, hope the enemy ignores the Guardian, and then drop the Divine Bond next turn when it can attack for 13 with the Divine Bond. Because here's the thing, a lot of people don't want to trade against the Guardian. If they don't have direct removal like Plasma Storm or Natural Selection, then they actually tend to sometimes just disenchant the Guardian, just dispel it. And then ignore it, just at 3/10 with no provoke, so they don't care about it. Until I drop a Divine Bond on it and just kick their ass. So sometimes I just hope for them to do that. Sometimes it's good to drop the Divine Bond instantly. Most times I don't like that. Most times I want him to survive one turn on the board and then do it. But those kill combos, the Divine Bond on a Knight for 6/5, on the Templar for 6/5, on the Guardian for 13 damage, on the Lion for 16 damage. Those things are reliably finishing the game for me, so you don't need more buffs, you don't need more aggression, you just need removal until you get to the late game when you get those finishers. That's the way I've been getting ridiculous success with Lyonar. Against Songhai, I mostly just rely on my healing. and Songhai has plenty of damaging spells. Don't play Regalia too much against Songhai. It's not that good, because they're just gonna get 2 Bloodleech masks, and 1 Phoenix Fire will destroy your entire Regalia pretty much. It's ridiculous. They have a lot of those cheap spells that can get rid of the Regalia fast. So don't rely on it that much. In that matchup, it's not that good. But keep in mind that you want to probably always save up in your hand a single removal spell like the True Strike to deal damage to the Chakri avatar. Never let it grow. Just remove it as soon as it's on the board. Very important, because they can get out of control if you don't pay attention to them early on. So have a removal spell against this bastard before it gets any bigger. Against Vetruvian, I honestly don't have enough experience, and Vetruvians have been the most threatening during our games. I think they've been the most dangerous against me. I'm not gonna craft a 3rd Lion Kasai. Okay, one thing about the Lion, good question, but one thing about the Lion is it's quite situational. The 3/5 with Celerity Rush is great for finishing the game, but in the mid game, it's the most inefficient of all the removals most times. It doesn't trade that well if you just want board control. I almost always replace it in my mid game. In my mid game, I want the Guardians. I don't want my Lions. They're not efficient enough with their stats. The Celerity is great when you want to finish the enemy hero, but it doesn't help you at all if you play against the enemy minions on their turn, for example. So they don't trade that well. You mostly don't want them in the early game unless you've got something very specific to remove, like maybe it's the only minion that can get to the enemy archers. That's why I don't want the 3rd one. It's not efficient enough in terms of mana for anything other than removals of very specific units situationally and late game finishers. So you don't want the 3rd one, I'd say. It's powerful situationally, so you want to. Now against Vetruvian, I think it's the matchup in which you really want Sunbloom, the Dispel card that hits a 2x2 square box. Because there's plenty of their things you want to dispel, like the gateway shit, the gateway golem, and their obelisks. Dispel the obelisk and it just basically doesn't do anything, it's just a 0/6 wall at that point. The obelisks, by the way, cannot attack if you buff their attack with your lasting judgment and dispel them or anything. They can't attack no matter what. So don't be afraid to use lasting judgment on the obelisks. And I think you need a lot of dispel. Sometimes you want to dispel your own minions, and that's why I think Sunbloom shines in this matchup the most. In case you're playing tournament games, you may want to add some Sunblooms in here because they have a lot of spells that lower enemies' minion attack to 0, and then you can dispel that on your own minion with a Sunbloom, positioning yourself so cleverly you dispel enemy minions and your own at the same time. Perhaps we want the 3/3 dispel every square around. What was he called? Well, there's a minion that dispels everyone around him. It costs 3. I think I disenchant. Yes, no, yeah, the Lightbender. You might want those instead of Sunblooms as well. Think about that if you're struggling against Vetruvian. You may want to then dispel your own minions who got their attack lowered to 0. Keep in mind that your minions who have your Zeal bonus will still get the Zeal bonus attack after this spell is used on them. Their base attack will be 0, so their Zeal will give them to +2 or 3. It's still solid shit. But, as I said, I have got the least amount of experience against Vetruvian, and it's the most scary one for me. And then, in Abyssian, you really want your AoE spells to never get her out of control. Keep in mind that you want to disenchant the crawlers if you can. Use that Templar and an Ephemeral Shroud if you have on those crawlers in the early game. It is important enough. Don't let Lilith get too many shadow creeps on the board, or by the time the mid game hits, she's gonna be hitting some crazy combos with it. You want to keep the shadow creep under control if you can with the Templars. You want to, if you get an AoE spell, what was it called? I still don't remember some of the names actually. I'm such a noob. Such a noob! If you have a Tempest against Abyssian, I would strongly recommend to keep it in your hand most cases, because until you use it, until you need it, because Abyssian can do some crazy spam and then combo off of it next turn with Death Watch. So you really just want to keep your AoE in your hand against Abyssian. A lot of the specific counters in your matchups are just the advice on which cards to keep in your hand, and against Abyssian, the Tempest, the AoE removal is the card. Also, Dispelling is very important against Abyssian. So keep your Dispel in your hand as well. If you get a Templar, you want to keep it. And if you ever struggle against that artifact that gives her flying, your biggest counter is the Ironcliff Guardian. If you want a poor version of my deck, if you can't afford the OP... If you can't afford the OP armor... What is it called? Get him. Where's my armor? Yeah, the Arclyte Regalia. If you can't afford the Arclyte Regalia because it's epic, and you maybe can't afford the Lions or something, make sure you get 3 Guardians. That is the absolute, unquestionable core of this deck. If there's one thing you want to enchant until you have 3 for sure, your #1 priority for enchanting, it would be the Guardian. Can't play without it. And then the Templar, the second priority. But you can replace the Templar with the Ephemeral Shrouds, 3 Shrouds, and you can get by. But the Guardians, you can't play without them. Abyssian's flying artifact will just eat you alive. The Ironcliff Guardian is the #1 counter to that. Incredibly important. Now against Magmar, it's just 2 beefy decks beating each other up. Your potions may make all the difference. Your Komodos may make all the difference, breaking the claws. Keep in mind against Magmar, you want to keep alive your small minions. If you've got a Komodo, if you've got a 2/2 Ephemeral Shroud or something, or a 2/2 Arclight Sentinel left on the board, don't trade those against his hero. Don't give him that benefit. Keep those alive so they will interrupt his natural selection that destroys enemy minion with the lowest attack. Keep those alive, so when he plays the claws, you can throw your cheap minions against him then. it's important to keep your cheap minions alive and handy for the claws and the natural selection. And that could give you the edge, and then your potions will be a very nice draw, and your bright tracers, your light tracers, for the healing, so that the beatdown will come out in your favor. But your small minions save you counterintuitively, because he's got Plasma Storm that kills all the small minions. So that's pretty much the matchups. And then in a Lyonar mirror, like I said, you will beat most Lyonars with this deck. And the reason you will is because they rely on either on buffs too much, and you're gonna own it with the Templars. Like I said, a third Templar it could be a good idea here. But you just kill the buffing Lyonars with the Templars most times. And if they rely on many small minions and War Surge, then unless you get unlucky and they get some idiotic combo, which just always happens in card games, you will keep it in check with your Tempest removal and with your True Strike. Just make sure you wipe his minions if you're playing against Lyonar. Don't focus on the hero, focus on the minions. Your goal in the mid game is to clear the board. It's not to deal face damage. Trust me, you don't need face damage. When you get 18 damage out of your hand in one turn on 8 mana, you pretty fucking much don't need face damage in the mid game. You just want to clear his board in the mid game in pretty much every matchup. Keep him under control until you draw your finisher, and then shit will get real for you. One way or the other, it's gonna be fine. You just need to remove in the mid game, and this deck will win you most Lyonar matchups as well. This tutorial will make its way to YouTube. Hope you enjoy. Hope it helps, and hope it doesn't shape the metagame too much, or everyone will start playing this OP freaking Lyonar against me, and my win rate will go down to 50, but hope it helps. After winning the tournament, I feel like I do have something to share, so there you go. There you have it.